Hi guys, know the story of this peasant who saves a wounded person, and some outlaws are looking for him to steal everything he has, but the peasant manages to face all the outlaws and finish them off. The domain of the weapon he has is due to his dark past. Welcome to Worth Recap. This time I show you the summary of the movie Old Henry. We start in a forest where a man is chased by some sheriffs on horseback. The chase is taken to a meadow where the man is shot in the leg and is captured by the sheriffs, who begin to question him about the whereabouts of his partner. After get the information, one of the sheriffs kills the man. We go to a farm in the year 1906, where we meet Henry and his son Wyatt. They are on their day at work when they see a horse in the distance. Together they approach the horse and discover that the horse's saddle is covered of blood. Seeing this, Henry wants to go look for the rider and Wyatt wants to accompany him, but Henry refuses to receive his help and orders him to take care of the horse and stay inside the house until he returns. Wyatt reluctantly listens to his father and go back to the house. Meanwhile, Henry with his horse begins to look for the rider and finds him almost dead near a tree with a shot in the shoulder and a bag full of cash. After seeing this, Henry tries to leave the place, leaving everything as he found it, but he regrets it and returns to take the man after eliminating the traces that showed that he was in that place. At the farm, Henry asks Wyatt for help to get the man into the house. There he applies first aid and Wyatt asks his father if the person will survive. Henry tells him that he will do it with the help of a doctor. For this reason, Wyatt offers to go look for the doctor, but his father tells him that he will go in the morning while Wyatt takes care of the wounded man. Shortly after, he leaves the house and takes the bag with money. Then he goes to his room and hides it behind a wall in his closet. For his part, Wyatt is curious about what his father is doing and goes to investigate. While he spies on him, he sees as it hides an amount of money and a weapon. The next morning, Henry prepares to go out to look for the doctor, so he ties the wounded man to the bed to prevent him from causing problems while he is not there. He also orders his son to try to lower his fever until he returns. Sheriffs looking for the wounded man find his trail. After Henry leaves, Wyatt goes to his room and searches the place where he saw his father put the wounded man's things and takes the gun, then goes outside and starts practicing his aim. Meanwhile, the wounded man, after hearing the shots, begin to remember his childhood when he witnessed a murder. Later, Wyatt enters the house again and goes to put away the gun he took out of the closet. But before doing so, he begins to investigate his father's things, finding weapons and ammunition, as well as some old newspaper clippings. At that moment, the sick wakes up and Wyatt puts things away to tend to him. For his part, Henry finds the trail of the sheriffs, who manage to follow the trail of the wounded man to the place where Henry found him. Henry approaches the sheriffs to find out why they persecute the person who helped. He was almost discovered, but he manages to escape in time. Meanwhile, Wyatt returns to check on the wounded man and discovers that the man woke up and untied himself. The confused man asks Wyatt how he got here and if he is alone. A nervous Wyatt tells him that his father brought him and that he is outside. However, the man does not believe him and throws himself on Wyatt and asks him about his things, threatening him. Wyatt does not say anything, and before something happens to Wyatt, Henry arrives and knocks the man down and hits him for a while, then ties him up to a chair and begins to extract the bullet without anesthesia while asking him questions about his identity. The man refuses to answer and only warns Henry that if he doesn't release him, he will get into a lot of trouble. This doesn't matter to Henry and he finishes removing the bullet. At that moment, Wyatt sees one of the horsemen approaching through the window and he tells Henry. Immediately, Henry orders Wyatt to hide while he goes to his room to retrieve his gun. Then he leaves the house and chats with the sheriffs, who look for the injured man and call him Curry. They also give him a detailed description of his appearance. Henry, after hearing that, asks the men why he had never seen them before, and if they are sheriffs. They tell him that they are from another county and that is why he has not seen them. Then they warn him that Curry is posing as sheriffs to commit robberies and murders. Then the sheriffs ask Henry for his full name and he replies that his name is Henry McAllister. Continuing with the questions, they mention if he has any relatives and he replies that only his brother-in-law Al. The sheriffs say they saw a farm in the walk and he tells them that's it. Then they want to know if he lives alone and he says yes, since he lost his wife 10 years ago. Later, one of the sheriffs remembers that a man named McAllister caused havoc in several counties years ago. Upon hearing this, Henry says that he does not know anything since he has lived on this farm for a long time. Then he tells the sheriffs to back off since he hasn't seen Curry and asks them to back off as night is coming and he has things to do. The sheriffs thank him for his cooperation and warn him to be careful since he doesn't know when he might run into Curry, and then they leave. Henry enters the house and begins to claim Wyatt for using the gun. Wyatt tells him that he started practicing to being able to help him if he needs it at some point. This only annoys Henry, who hits Wyatt, which makes him angry and tells him that one day he will leave him. Then Henry goes to Curry and asks him what his story is, and he tells him that he is a sheriff and the people he saw are outlaws who robbed a bank posing as sheriffs. Then Curry tried to stop them but only managed to take their loot and run away, arriving at the place where he was found. He then warns Henry that they will be back. Meanwhile, the gathered outlaws ask their leader why they didn't attack Henry's house, and he replies that the way he had his weapon was that of an expert, so he better decided to retreat and regroup with more outlaws and go to the safe. Then he sends one of his subordinates to keep an eye on Henry. At night Henry talks to Curry, and Henry asks him why he became sheriff. Curry tells him that when he was a child he lived in New Mexico, specifically in Peasant. Henry recognizes the place since Billy the Kid was killed there. Curry continues talking and mentions that he witnessed Billy the Kid's death when he was a child, as he worked with the people who gave Billy the Kid lodging. Then they started a shootout to kill him. Then Billy the Kid meets up with Curry and he asks her to lower her head so that nothing happens to her. After witnessing this, Curry decided to get away from the low life. Upon hearing this, Henry frees him and then tells him to leave immediately and hands him a gun. At that moment the subordinate who sent the outlaw begins to shoot towards the house. Because of this everyone hides and the outlaw goes under the house to shoot to kill. Henry, seeing this, gives Wyatt a gun and tells him that he only shoot if the man enters the house. Then he leaves the house with his shotgun and manages to make the outlaw come out of hiding. He then shoots him so he doesn't escape, managing to capture him and begins to torture him to get information from his companions. However, the man refuses to speak and Henry kills him while Wyatt watches. Henry explains that he did it since he started it all. Wyatt understands. Then Henry tells him that his teammates could come any minute, so they have to get rid of the carcass and throw it to the pigs to eat. In the morning the other outlaws visit Al's farm and try to find out information from Henry, and Al refuses to talk. They with no choice but to attack him. For their part, Henry, Wyatt and Curry prepare to flee the farm, but before they can do so a huge group of outlaws arrives. With no other choice they lock themselves in the house. Then Henry tries to make a deal with the leader of the outlaws to fix things in a bare-knuckle fight between the two. The leader, upon hearing this, laughs and tells him that this is not going to happen. Then they teach him that they took as a hostage. Seeing this, Henry gets angry and goes to his closet and takes out his weapons, then gives one to his son so that he can flee and defend himself if necessary. However, he refuses to do so since he wants to help him. He accepts his help and tells him to stay inside and shoot if he sees it necessary. Then he leaves the house and asks the outlaws to leave his brother-in-law and then leave his property, and if they do that he will let them live. Hearing this they laugh and the leader shoots him in the head. After seeing this, Wyatt comes out of the house and tries to kill the leader but misses, and all the outlaws shoot at them. Henry manages to get them back into the house. Inside he tells Wyatt to lower his head and nothing will happen to him. Hearing this, Curry remembers his encounter with Billy the Kid and recognizes Henry as such. On his side, Henry takes his things and leaves the house again. After a little talk, a massacre begins with Henry killing all the outlaws. The leader manages to hide and has a 1-versus-1 confrontation with Henry, who is taken to the forest, where Henry kills him with a shot to the head. Then he returns to the house and Wyatt receives him. At that moment Curry shoots him after Henry discovers that Curry was an outlaw. After this, Curry apologizes since he did not want things to end like this, since he was the person who saved him when he was a child. He then tries to finish him off, but Wyatt stops him, at which point he is shot and Curry dies. Wyatt tries to help Henry, who thanks him for being a good son and then asks him to go out into the world and find happiness for him. After saying this, he dies. Later Wyatt buries Henry next to his wife and then leaves the farm with his father's things. Thanks for watching this video. Subscribe to see more videos like this. If you wanted to see more, I recommend this movie.